Now, when we talk about the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and sometimes Joseph, there is a lot of controversy over when they lived and what their dates are. But it may surprise a lot of people to learn that we actually have a synchronism for one of the patriarchs in the Bible. Stay tuned and find out more on this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. Today, we are going to talk about the synchronism that applies to Abraham. And if you like these videos and wish to support us, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps. And if you wish to support us financially, please consider becoming a Patreon member or by purchasing my recent book, The Ark of the Covenant in its Egyptian Context and Illustrated Journey, available at most major bookstores. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the one synchronism we have for a patriarch. Now, this is actually really exciting because we don't have very much chronological data for Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Joseph. But we do have one synchronism for Abraham. So it surprises many people to find out that we can actually date Abraham. And the synchronism in question comes from the book of Genesis, Genesis 14:1, where it talks about Amraphel of Shinar. Now, this passage is the beginning of the War of Kings, where a coalition of 4 kings of the ancient Near East go to war against another coalition of 5 kings. This is the big war that occurs at the time of Abraham. Now, we don't have an identity for most of those kings, but there is one king in that list that we do know about, and that is Amraphel of Shinar. And this one is really, really interesting. So, who was Amraphel of Shinar? Well, first of all, let's ask the question, where was Shinar? Scholars agree that Shinar is Babylon. This is uncontested. Everyone agrees that Shinar is Babylon. Shinar is the Semitic word for Babylon. Okay? So that's uncontested. But interesting, we happen to have a complete kings list for the kings of Babylon. From its first dynasty all the way to its fall to the Persians. We have almost all the kings recorded. So all we have to do then is take the word Amraphel and compare it to the Babylonian kings list and see if there's a match. Now, in Hebrew, Amraphel begins with an aleph, has an M or mem, has an R or resh, a P or pei, and ends with an L or lamed. Now, in Semitic languages, the last letter often changes for a variety of reasons. So we can sort of forego trying to match that last character because it often changes. So that's nothing unusual in Semitic languages. If we can get a match, though, on the first 4 letters, then we've got a match. Now, there is one king in the Babylonian kings list that happens to match all 4 letters, which is King Hammurabi of the first dynasty of Babylon. In Babylonian, his name is Amurapi. It starts with a guttural, has an M, an R, and a P. It is a perfect match. And what's interesting about Hammurabi is he wrote lots and lots of letters and lots of correspondence. So we actually have a number of synchronisms for Hammurabi. he sent a letter to Rin Sin of Larsa. He sent a letter to Samsu-Adad I of Assyria. We have a letter that he corresponds with Zimrilim of Mari. We even have a connection between Hammurabi and Egypt. The stela of Yatinu connects Hammurabi with Neferhotep I of Dynasty 13. So we can place Hammurabi's dates with pretty good certainty. His dates are 1765 to 1722 BC, so he lived in the 18th century. But because we have now this synchronism with Amraphel-Ashina, which we can now identify as Hammurabi of Babylon, we now know that Abraham must have been alive sometime between 1765 and 1722 BC. Now, this is really, really interesting and really, really important for another reason. For example, when Patterns of Evidence tries to place Joseph during the reign of Amenemhat III, that is 67 years before the reign of Hammurabi. The implication being that Joseph would have come to Egypt before the death of Abraham. That's just not happening. I'm sorry, that isn't happening. Joseph has to arrive in Egypt after Abraham's death. So, because we have this synchronism that proves that Abraham was alive in the 18th century, Joseph also must have arrived in Egypt after the 18th century. And if we follow, say, a more traditional late-date Exodus point of view, that would place Joseph in the 17th century, which would be fit with what we know about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes of Israel that migrate to Egypt. Anyway, so we do have a definite date for Abraham, which is really remarkable and really interesting. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.